Welcome back, everybody. This is Magic with Randy. I am Randy, and today we'll talk about the European RC and what to expect. Just a quick reminder, guys, this is a standard RC, so it is going to be a little bit different. Last time we had Modern, now we're back to standard. I'm going to see some hopefully new decks, maybe. Maybe we'll just see the same thing that we always expected to see. Who knows? But as always, guys, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out. Let me know what you think is going to be at the European RC and what you think is going to win the European RC. I'd love to hear from you guys. We're starting off with a new one. This is the Jeskai control list. So it does have some new cards here, as in the Shaco, Paragon of Ways is a 5-mana 4/5 Jeskai colors and 2 colorless, flying Vigilance, and then when it enters, you get to exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard, copy it without paying its mana cost. A super powerful kind of top-end card, essentially, for the standard control deck, which is kind of funny to think of when you think of standard as like 5-mana cards have kind of been like usually what like standard was known for was like 4 and 5 powerful drop cards, and now this is like, yeah, man, the 5 mana is a lot of mana to invest, and even then it's like, maybe. So, but that is, one of the new cards here we're seeing in the Jeskai control list. The next one is the Moraine River Regent. Mainly playing for the Coil and Catch here. It's the instant Omen, 3 and a blue. You have to draw 3 cards, then discard a card, then you shuffle that card back into the library. Also has a good top end as well, with this being 6 mana, 6/7 flying. You get to return up to 2 other non-land permanents to their owner's hand. And that is kind of like the big cards we're playing. Early game, we have Lightning Helix now to be able to deal damage, gain life, kind of stave off and not die right away. We also have Dispelling Exhale is a new counter spell. Being 1 in a blue for an instant, you get to counter target spell unless they pay 2, and then if you reveal a dragon or you control a dragon, they have to pay 4 instead. So nice little bonus effects. You always want to play these dragons anyway. We also are playing Temporary Lockdown kind of as our main way to interact with people, right? Like we're worried about all the low drop abilities, or sorry, all the low drop creatures and enchantments running around. This just gets to sweep them all up in one go. So it makes sense why we're playing, 4 of these most of the time. And then, of course, we have Stock Up as kind of our way to stock back up into the mid-game and get us through so we can get to our powerful dragons and just kind of close out the game as a whole. This is kind of, just a quick overview of the Jeskai control deck that's been running around. It's putting up some numbers here in the last couple weeks. I think people are kind of getting more prepared for the RCs coming up. And so, obviously, control players are going to control. And here is just a list. This is not an end-all be-all for the list by any means. Any of the lists I show you today are just decks that lists that did well in a recent challenge. So obviously expect changes in the sideboard, expect main boards to be tweaked a little bit differently depending on what the player is playing, what they think about. But Creature Suite, they got the Bezas. We have for early game, our big game kind of like gaining life, stabilizing type situation. We have our Shaco, however to pronounce that dragon's name, has like our kind of top game finishers. We got Braids, Get Lost as removal spells to go along with the Lightning Helix, the Dispelling Exhale, and 3 steps ahead counter spells, Temporary Lockdown, and Day Judgment. We also have Stock Up. This one was playing Recover the Way, which the first 2 abilities or first 2 chapters let you look at the top 3 cards and put one of them on top. I believe, and then the rest on the bottom in a random order. So just ways to kind of keep generating better card value. This was also playing one Ride's End, but pretty stock as a whole. Like this is just like you're gonna tweak some numbers here and there, and then the sideboard's also gonna be tweaked based off of what you're expecting. Like the 2 Wilt Leaf Leads are there definitely just for the Esper bounce matchup, things like that. So just some things to look out for. This is a deck that I definitely expect to show up in some percentage at the RC and the European RC. If I had to guess, it's probably going to be on the lower end. I would put it like probably between 5 to 7%. We'll see if players playing this, depending on how many people actually think control is well positioned going into the metagame as a whole. Alright, this next one, to no surprise, Mono Red Aggro. We'll go over the creatures if you don't know. We have our 1-drop here is Heartfire Hero. Card's a powerhouse. I don't have much more to say. This card can literally take over the game and just kind of win by itself, essentially. Well, not by itself, but close enough to it. Of course, we also have the Emberheart Challenger. Haste, Prowess, 2/2. Has a Valorant's ability. Super good. If you don't know what Mono Red Aggro is, I either pity you or envy you because you haven't had to play against it, and it is just kind of backbreaking. And of course the Manifold Mouse. Kind of this is the known mouse package, if you will. It's what pretty much a lot of the aggro decks up until recently were all playing is the mouse package. Um, with Manifold Mouse kind of being the best one because it gives you free Valorant triggers every turn. Especially if you go 1 drop, 2 drop, 3 drop, like this is just almost the perfect curve as a whole. They're also running Monstrous Rage, a card that many people were claiming would get banned and was hoping would get banned in standard. Super powerful, giving it +2, +0 to end turn, giving it a monster roll token, which gets it +1/+1 in trample permanently for 1 mana. Super, super good. Lightning Strike, just a good way to deal damage. Kind of like our de facto Lightning Bolt in standard. Essentially, they're never going to give us Lightning Bolt in standard. We get Lightning Strike instead. And of course, Burst Lightning, being able to do 2 damage, or for 5 mana altogether, 1 and 4 for kicker. You get to do 4 damage to any target. Just good ways to finish out the game and burn out your opponent. And here is again, this is pretty stock as a whole of a list. This is a little bit differently. The biggest thing with these lists is they're starting to play the Light Shadower. It's a 2 and a red for 3/3 haste. And when it comes into play, you can discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Also, when you attack, if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can exile one of those cards at random and then play it until you end your turn. Notably, it says play, so that means if you hit a land, you can play a land if you haven't played a land yet. Just something to look out for. But overall, the biggest surprise with this list is they were playing 2 Shocks in the main. That's a little unheard of. Having the 2 Sunspine Links in the main is also a little surprising. That's kind of been a sideboard card for a little bit now. I think the Abrade in the sideboard says a lot about the Corey Steel decks that are running around. Kind of at least a little bit of a nod to that hey, we kind of have to worry about Corey Steel sometimes because you can just make a ridiculous board with Corey Steel as a whole. But just, some ideas and such running around. But I expect this deck to probably be one of the most played decks at the RC. If I had to guess, this would probably be roughly about 15% is what I would put this at, just as a rough guess, for what I think we'll see at the European RC. Obviously, feel free to tell me if I'm wrong or you think it's going to be higher in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Moving on to Jeskai Oculus. Since it's probably no one, the first card is a Horned Oculus. This card has been a powerhouse for a while now. We've seen it in Standard, we've seen it in Modern. I hear everybody has seen it. I don't know. That's a trash fire of a format right now. But 2 and a blue for a 5/5 flying, super well costed. Additional cost to cast the spell that you need to exile 6 cards from your graveyard, and you get to manifest dread at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. Just a super good card. We're also going to be playing Steam Core Scholar with this. One of the known cards of this deck, having it be a flying vigilance for 2/2 for 3 mana, 2 and a blue. Then when it enters, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard an instant, a sorcery, or a creature with flying. And Marauding Mako is kind of a new card that kind of has come into this list. It kind of helps you be a little bit aggressive in the early games. It also helps you when people bring in Graveyard Hate, so where you're discarding cards, you're still putting counters on your little Shark Pirate here, still getting to do damage and still fight through Graveyard Hate essentially. And of course, we have Helping Hand as a way to bring back our Oculus when it goes to the graveyard when we discard it, with some of our different ways to discard. Just super good card for 1 mana. And then this is another new one, the Glacial Dragon Hunt. It's a blue and a red for a sorcery. You get to draw a card, and then you may discard a card. And when you discard a non-land card this way, it does deal 3 damage to any target creature. Really good here. This is a big powerhouse boon for this deck. Mainly because the biggest problem is a lot of times you would set up by drawing and discarding on turn 2 and not really interact with the board. This allows you to still discard Oculus on turn 2 while also interacting with the board and being able to kill your opponent's 1-drop, 2-drop type situation, and just makes it to where you're not getting ran over in the early game quite as easily. And of course, Prof's Idyllic Memory is the last kind of card I want to talk about in this list. This is key cards, I would argue, for this list. This was a big thing that people started playing before we had the Mako, the Shark Pirate. This just lets you be able to draw a bunch of cards. You're cycling through your deck. You still can pump up your creatures, make them big, attack in. Just does a lot of work for, does a lot of work for 2 mana, and it just stays on the field constantly. So, and it replaces, so when it hits the field, you get to draw a card already. So, just a great card to overall. Just can't say enough goodness about that card. And once again, here's just like a stock list or a list that had done well recently in a challenge as of recording this video. So, like I said, we see, Oculus Scholars, both for Spyglass Siren and Marauding Mako as your 1-drops, Fear Missing Out as your 2-drops. And also playing that Light Shatter, being able to discard cards, being able to recast cards from your graveyard, super good. 4 Helping Hands, 4 Torch of Towers as good removal, along with the Dragon Hunt, 4 profs, 1 Spell Pierce, 1 Winter Night Stories, which that is just lets you draw 3 and then discard a card, essentially. So, and then the sideboard here has Destroy Evils as a way to interact with Graveyard Hate, like if you're playing against Rest in Peace and such. Sandra Spark Hunter as a way to have another just way to fight through the Graveyard Hate that isn't affected by Graveyard Hate, essentially. Pyroclasm for early board wipes, Negate and Disdainful Stroke for your counter spells, Ghost Vacuum for fighting against the other graveyard decks, graveyard strategies, and Shelter by Light to gain some life, or Shelter by Ghost, not light, and Elegant Lordium just there to destroy the enchantments that are going to be messing up your graveyard. Nothing too special. This deck has started picking up a lot of steam. I think it's because it has a decent Pixie matchup or a decent Esper Bounce matchup as a whole, so I think that's why this deck has started to pick up some more steam, with, of course, Esper Bounce still being probably one of the best decks in the format, right behind or if not equal to the red aggressive decks that are running around. So I think that's why you're seeing this deck pick up a little bit more steam. That being said, I think this deck does struggle against the red aggressive deck, so I think it's going to be a little tit for tat, kind of depending on what you think you're going to play against, what you think is going to happen as a whole. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the RC. I'm really curious because this is the first big standard tournament we've had in a minute, especially since the new set dropped, of course. So it'll be interesting to see if this deck is going to keep up or if it just gets ran over by mono red decks. I think that probably 5%, 5 to 7% will show up with this, kind of like the Jeskai control list. I think that we'll see players play it, but I don't think it's going to necessarily be amazing to play. And, I mean, definitely a deck that could get you into the top 8. I don't think you're dumb if you take this deck by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's going to come a lot down to what you play against and what your draws come out to be. I will say, as someone who has played this deck a little bit in different variations, you do mulligan quite heavily. The way this deck loses is to itself a lot, so it will be interesting to see if someone has, just a nice hot run with it, or just, maybe found out the way to smooth out the draws. Maybe this is the best way to play it, with what we're seeing here as this build. Only time will tell, but I'm curious to see, what happens, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that as well. Alright. The new hotness of the metagame is it aggro. We're playing Monastery Swiftspear. 1 mana, Prowess Haste, 1/2, a classic. Slickshot Show-Off is finally making its way back into the format. I don't remember if you guys remember this card at all, but I remember when it got spoiled and when it started seeing play, this card was warping the format. It was going to win Magic of the Year. It was going to do amazing things. It was the greatest card ever be printed. And then it fell off hard when the mice got printed because they were just better in Standard. And it was hilarious. And then, of course, the newest hotness here, the Kori Steelcutter. If you guys haven't seen this card, haven't played against this card, I envy you highly, because you have been playing a lot better games than I've been playing. But it is a one in a red artifact equipment. Equipped creatures get +1, or equipped creature, sorry, not creatures. Creature gets +1/+1, has trample and haste. Alright, that's not terrible, right? Equipped for 1 in a red. But it has the flurry ability. So whenever you cast your second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white monk creature token with prowess, and then you may attach the equipment to it. So it just turns into an army in a can. And if you ever play 2 of these out, you are just dumb. It is just dumb. But to go along with the Izzet deck, so this is essentially the core of their creatures. Well, this and Storm's Talent is essentially the core of the creatures. You're playing, 4 of each of these. These are the creatures you're playing, quote unquote. You also have Sleight of Hand, Ops, things like that. And it gets to play Stock Up as a way just to refill in the mid-game to late game. So, after you've emptied out your hand or you've done a lot of, turning through your deck, you get to play Stock Up to re-get, some of the better spells of the top 5. Just a great little combo deck. Combo's not the right word, but a great little aggressive deck as a whole. This deck has been putting up numbers. I will say I think Corey Steelcutter is a great card against the bounce decks. So I think that's why we're seeing so much play for it. We're starting to see decks start to play Braids because of it. I do think this is something that is coming up, and it will be interesting to see what happens with Corey Steelcutter if the Izzet deck is a flash in the pan or here to stay. I think it's more of a flash in the pan. I could be wrong. I've been wrong multiple times before. I don't know if this is going to be here to stay. I will also argue that these decks feel a lot worse when you are playing the aggressive decks, like when you're playing the Mice package and stuff like that. Those decks feel better against the Izzet Prowess deck. So that is just, or Izzet Aggro deck, that is just one of my notations to notate in my playtesting. I think that if I'm on the mouse side and I sit down against Izzet Aggro, I feel pretty good. The only times you feel bad is when they go like Corey Steelcutter into Corey Steelcutter, and then it becomes a real challenge because they're making multiple tokens a turn. They can make tokens in your turn. Like, it becomes a lot more worse of a matchup as a whole because of that. So I think moving forward, though, I would rather be on the Mice side than the Corey Steelcutter side. Just my personal beliefs here. But this is kind of a generic version of it. I don't think this is the end-all be-all of the list by any means. I think this deck is very early in its infancy. So we'll see what happens. Like, a lot, Monstrous Rage wasn't even being played when we were first being made out. And now we're seeing Monstrous Rage make its way back into the deck. But, we're playing, like I said before, 4 Swift Speeders, 4 Slow-Offs, 4 Corey Steelcutters, 4 Storm Chaser's Talent. So your big creature package. You're playing Stockouts, you're playing Ops, Sleight of Hands. We're only playing Burst Lightning as our only removal spell, along with Torch the Tower, Into the Flood Maul, and 2 Spell Pierces. I think the Spell Pierces are just bad. I don't think you need them in this type of list. I think I'd rather have more Into the Flood Mauls or more things that can interact, essentially. But it is interesting to see what happens moving forward with this deck as a whole. I do think it will be interesting to see. I do like this deck, though, but I am afraid I think it's going to be a flash in the pan. But let me know what you guys think. Is this going to actually run over standard? And will the new hotness kind of take over, if you will? Love to hear what you guys think about that. And now we're on to the big baddie. The Esper Bounce, if you will. The Esper Pixie. The deck that's going to ruin standard. From some people. So, of course, Esper Pixie would have a Pixie in it called Nurturing Pixie. As one of your 1-drops here, you're also playing the new card Sun Pearl Kirin. This is a card that I saw. I immediately thought of the Esper deck, and they are running 4 of them on average right now. So 3 to 4 of them on average right now. So I think that's just kind of crazy. It also allows the deck to be a lot more reactive or proactive with its flash abilities. So is a good reason to be playing it as a whole, and you don't have to return something. It's not like the Fear of Isolation where it was part of the cost you have to return. This one you can return, so it is just one of those nice things. And you can get some extra bonus too if someone's killing one of your tokens. You can just kind of bounce that token in response and get to draw a card. Just some nice little things going on with this, little synergies that this card does, essentially. And then Entity Tracker has been a new card that has seen a lot of play coming out of the deck, and I think it's because of the flash ability. I think that Esper Bounce is going into its high tempo phase where it's going to be playing a lot more flash, playing a lot more proactive and reactive in the sense of like it wants to be able to do things, just keep its mana open and react to whatever you're doing. It wants to gauge what you're doing and do its own thing in response to that, essentially. We've even seen people like Misplaced Ginger has been a big advocate for Entity Tracker. He's cut out Stock Up. Stock Up has no longer been stock in these lists, essentially. So I do think Entity Tracker is making waves and making a comeback into the deck as a whole. And it does make sense, though, being able to have your enchantments just draw cards. You can draw so many more cards than you can with Stock Up with this card. And it just allows you to keep turning through the deck, which the deck really needs. So I don't think it's too surprising to see this card come out. And of course, we are playing the Storm Chaser's Talent. One of the best cards in Standard right now, at least in my opinion. We're also playing Hopeless Nightmare. The card you know, you love, you hate, depending on who you are and what you're playing against. And then, of course, this talent ain't big enough. It's kind of like the whole bounce package that ties it all together. We have Nurturing Pixie now. We have Sun Pearl Current. We still have Fear of Isolation. We have this talent ain't big enough. Just a bunch of ways to bounce and just get infinite value out of our enchantments. that we are playing. But this is essentially what is considered, quote unquote, the best deck in the format. I definitely think this will probably be the most played deck in the format. I think it's going to edge out the mono red burn or mono red aggro. I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be close because I put mono red aggro probably at 15%. I think this will be 20%, 15 to 20%. I think it's going to be neck and neck between Esper and mono red aggro. I think they're going to be tied for first and second for most played deck at the European RC, without a doubt. And then kind of going over this list. This is a misplaced Ginger's list that he top forward with as a challenge. But, he's playing the Pixie. He's brought back Optimistic Scavenger. That was a card that has not seen play for a minute. It was kind of getting cut more and more from the deck, and it's being brought back. Spiteful Hex Mage is being brought back as well. Mainly for the Sun Pearl Kirin, you can bounce that roll token. Back to your hand, you get to draw a card from it. Fear of Isolation still seeing play. Enemy Tracker is being played. Hopeless Nightmare, Storm Chaser's Talent, Nowhere to Run is kind of our bounced items, along with the Momentum Breaker. I almost said Monument. Momentum Breaker. And of course, this sound ain't big enough, and he was running one Destroy Evil in the main. A little interesting, a little surprising for that kind of removal spell in the main as a whole. But, this is kind of what we're seeing from this deck. The sideboard doesn't really matter. It's going to change. The sideboard will change. This deck has a rotating sideboard, if nothing else, where it depends on what you think your matchup is going to be, what you think you're going to be playing against a bunch, what you think you're not going to see. There's just too many factors to go into for this kind of a sideboard. This is, essentially to equate to like Legacy. This is like the Delver deck of Standard, where you're constantly changing out numbers and things and just trying to figure out the best, most optimal list to play for that weekend. That being said, I do think this is probably the best deck to take right now. It has a good matchup against the aggressive decks, which is what matters. Jeskai obviously is a little bit rougher, so it will be interesting to see what all comes of it and how this deck, really comes to fruition, and if it's going to take over the European RC or not. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments down below. And don't forget, guys, if you like what you're seeing, you like what I'm doing, go ahead and leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. And I'll catch you guys next time as we break down what happened at the European RC.